Hello and welcome to Stampscaping 101. This is a card that I just stamped out, and it was an exercise in something that occurred to me after the last video lesson, and that's one that I wanted to really go into highlighting and shadows and the effective usage of those two aspects of scenery stamping. And I wanted to do kind of a comparison and contrast with a similar composition, or the same composition, but without kind of a selective use of shading, okay? Now these two cards here are done with the same, main stamp and color schemes, okay? The difference is that this one on the left here was done with a selective use of primarily the medium and darker tones, where this one right here goes through the same kind of a process of these different variations of these different hues, okay? So this scene right here uses these different blues here, but it's just done in an approach where I was just kind of filling up that area with all of those colors, okay? On this one right here, I just used a selective usage of, the medium and darker tones, leaving areas of light. The same thing goes for the structure. That mill in here was using about 3 shades of brown, okay? From a tan to a medium brown to a darker brown. But on this one here, it's just kind of done over the entire object. So in this one here, it's kind of seen these different objects within the scene as a 3-dimensional shape, as opposed to a 2-dimensional shape to fill in kind of with a mono value, okay, just like coloring in the whole thing. This rock down here is, it's green, we'll just call it a mossy rock or something like that, and it's darker on the, kind of what we would see as kind of like a vertical edge where it's lighter on the top, okay? And they stand out a little bit more in terms of a more rounded look when you approach it, the objects as kind of individual 3-dimensional shapes, okay? So anyways, but here we are in the scene right here. What I mentioned in the video, wasn't really planning on going in and finishing off the scene completely. I was just going to leave it kind of like that, without, additional textures and imagery like this down below, but I liked where it was going, and I don't know, when I'm doing a scene, I really like to finish it off. And it feels incomplete, even though this was just supposed to be a lesson in shading. But what I'm going to do is I'm going in here, and in the video, if you watch it towards the end, I'm applying some of this white pigment ink and things like the gel pen dots for additional lighting and texture and atmosphere. But I just wanted to allow the card to dry off a little bit, probably about an hour or so, and add in these finishing touches to the scene. Now where I add this kind of a dry brushed application of this pigment ink is in my lighter areas typically. In something like this, I show where adding in some of that tone, over the top of it, like these dots, it looks a little bit out of place because I don't have the white light reflecting off of any, surfaces in here. So if you have this kind of foggy look to it, this mist it would be light hitting moisture within the scene. That's what it would represent, at least. So you have to retain some of that light of the page, so it's not just for highlights, it's, you know, it's for these different types of effects. Okay, now one of the things that I do as well in the scene is I added a couple of these larger dots. These little dotted highlights represent just that. They're kind of highlights, specular light within a scene, but I've added these kind of larger yellow dots, and I was going to go in and add a little bit of green, lime green pigment ink, okay, and we'll call these fireflies or lightning bugs in the scene. It's kind of just a little, I don't know, additional texture, you might say. Maybe it's just something that adds in a little bit of visual interest. Okay. Now I've put a little bit of this dry brushed pigment ink over the top of it and a little bit of a greenish tinge. That. Okay. So just a kind of fun little touch, you know. I thought in here it got a little bit, I don't know, not muddy, but a little bit boring, I guess you can say, in terms of the absence of varied values in there kind of representing light. So this is one way to go back in and add light back into it in the form of this thing that represents you know, a glowing bug. So there you have it. Two views of the mill. I don't know about you, but I like this one better. And it's less ink, you could say. It's a quicker application. I don't know, maybe this was quicker because I wasn't being careful at all and I just kind of filled in the area. But you can see just what kind of a more selective approach to your coloring can lend to a scene, okay? These are the same blues in here as there are here. Same browns for the most part. I added a few more alcohol pen touches right in here, but, you know, make things a little bit more dimensional and deep in terms of space by the use of selective coloring, okay? And you can have something a little bit more visually rich, you might say, in terms of value and intensity and, you know, textures and whatnot, okay? So one of the biggest things I always get, I can't do light, you know, mostly from beginning scenic stampers. The way that you control light is just don't ink quite as much with your darker tones and medium tones. Leave some light areas, objects like that, usually to the top surfaces of things, or you can look at the stamp itself and you can get your clues as far as what to ink in based on what you see within the design itself. Let me see if I have something here. Here's a cloud. You can simply make certain areas of the cloud darker that are already dark on the design. That was the case with the mill here. There's a lot of tone within the design itself, and the rooftop is lighter, so I just reiterated that same type of shading scheme with additional color. Okay? So anyways, if you choose to watch the video, I hope you enjoy it, and thanks for tuning in. Okay, in this video we're not going to do really so much of a completed scene, but just kind kind of an exercise in one of the aspects of scenic stamping that I utilize in all of my scenes, and that's the use of shadows and highlighting. Okay, and I'm just going to do just this one image right here, and it's the Old Mill Large stamp. And I'm using this one because it has a little structure in it, the mill itself, and you know, we have the trees in there, and kind of a grassy area with the water. And I figure with all those different areas in there, we can really kind of reinforce this idea of lighting in those various areas within the impression, within the scene. Okay, and I'll do this twice. I'm using the unmounted rubber die, and this acrylic block has the Tech and Peel material on it, which allows an unmounted piece of rubber to temporarily stick to it. Okay. Now I'm doing this two different ways. I'm doing this twice because I want to make a point of the shadows and highlights within the scene, because just to do it is one thing, but to kind of show what the scene looks like without the shadows and highlights, you know, so you can kind of compare and contrast. I thought that would be more effective as a lesson here. So, let's see here. One's stamped a little bit higher and one's a little bit lower, but, you know, no big deal. Okay, now let's see here. I'm looking at these areas, and let's just say it's kind of a high noon scene or something like that. Right around in this kind of grassy area, you know, we'll put the scene in kind of a spring noon, high noon type of setting. So we'll make this green within here, okay? And where we have this little, you know, path of water coming out, we'll make that blue. We'll give this a brownish wooden coloring hue, and we'll also make this blue up top. Okay, so let me just try to get through this as quickly as possible, because, you know, this isn't really so much about the scene itself as it is about the lighting within the scene. Let's go with where's my aqua? Okay, this is an Adirondack Lights Aqua. I'm just going to use the re-inker fluid. And I think I'll use this for my blue, and I'll also use it for my green, I think. Okay, now I just re-inked my black pad. I'm kind of tilting this to see if I have some little balls of ink that are kind of a little bit wet. If it's kind of shining back like a little glistening area of ink, it's a little bit wet, so I'm probably going to get a little bit of smearing, especially on this impression right here, but so be it, okay? Alright, now let's see here. Okay, I'm just going in, and this is the lightest value of blue that I'll be using. So it's going to come into my scene quite a bit. Alright, now I'm picking up a lot of that black, so it's making it a little bit gray. But like I said, not a big deal. I don't want a huge slathering, you know, streak of black going across my page, but having a little bit of, it'll be okay. Hopefully. Okay, on this one here, I'm going to kind of control my use of lighting more so. On this one here, I'll go more of a mono value type of approach, okay? You'll see what I mean when I get to that. Okay, a lot of smearing on here, like I said. Now this isn't indicative of the ink, on glossy paper or something like that. I don't need to heat set this. I just, I re-inked that black pad just, a minute ago. And, the impression is really, really juicy. Okay. That's what that looks like so far. Okay. I'm leaving a little bit of areas, as you can see, a little bit lighter in here than the other parts. Okay. Now, let's go into this one right here, and let's say we're going to have blue skies, green grass. I know I have blue on this grass down here, but blue is a component of green, right? So that's why I used some of that blue right on that grassy area as a foundation for it. Blue is a foundation for green. Okay, now this is going to be a little bit hard for me to do because, I care about lighting and shadows, but let's just go in here and let's just see the water as blue, the sky is blue, and the grass is green, okay? And not really think about it too much in terms of how light might hit it, okay? And we'll see what the difference is. Okay, so see down here, nothing has been really left light except for the cabin, or the mill, but I'm going to, color that brown. Okay, so we'll still build through various values of these different hues, but just in one of the scenes I'm being just a little bit more selective as far as the placement of color. Color and value. Okay. Alright. Now, let's move into a medium tone blue. If I had more time, I'd work through the salvia blue probably, but let's just go in right to a medium tone blue. This light blue is really similar to a Memento. Oops. I think it's Danube blue. Or is there a different one? I forget now. Maybe this one's a little bit more of the darker one. Let's go ahead and just use this one then. Okay. Inking up, using the same wand tip as the previous color. Okay. Remember, this one's the selective placement of value, color. Okay. Still retaining some of the lighter areas and placing this down in the sky. If I want a little bit of a cloud up there, I can leave that. Okay. Okay. Let's go to our mono value one. this cardstock is really allowing the colors to glide, as is that first layer of aqua, because the aqua is nice and slippery as far as the consistency, the viscosity of the ink itself. So layering this other thinner style of ink, brand of ink, allows it to really glide. Okay, alright. Well, let's go into a darker blue. Let's try the Memento. Memento's a little bit darker. Not too much darker, but a little bit. Okay, this one's starting to come together, I think, in terms of kind of a, I don't know, when you start building these colors up like this and layering them on there, at some point in time, if you've retained some of the lighter areas, you get this kind of, this glowing look to it. I mean, this one's just blue, so it's a cool temperature scheme, but it still looks like it has a bit of a glow to it, you know, when you transition the colors going from light to dark, like that. So this one's starting to come together for me. Okay, let's apply this onto their mono value one. Okay. It's really hard for me to just ink up everything kind of in a uniform fashion, because it goes against my kind of sensibilities, so I find myself thinking that, you know, I want to put on the brakes of some of this, but while doing it, but well, for the sake of the lesson, we'll kind of go against I don't know, the inclinations. Okay, pretty dark so far. And it's because we've been going with dark tones, of course. But let's now, I was wondering if I should use some black on here, but not quite yet. Let's go ahead and move into some of our greenish tones for the, I guess I did say this was going to be noon, but, well, it got darker, so let's start warming this up a little bit, at least. Okay. This color now that I'm using is a yellow-green, just if you have like kind of a yellow-green of some sort, or a yellow, you can use that. Kind of a warmer green. Remember, where the warmer green kind of overlaps blue, it will appear as though the blue is now green. So you'll have some transitions of hue within those areas, just for the very, you know, fact that you're layering those colors over one another. This one's a light green Marvy, a little bit of a deeper green than this one, a little bit more yellow in this one. A little bit more blue in this one. Okay, they're very bright colors, but you know, I'm putting a layer over the top of blue, so that's always going to affect what you see with your eye. Okay, let's go into a green. Let's take a pine green. Go on with the dark green. You should all have a dark green in your collection of some sort, a darker value green. Okay, being a little bit more selective as far as the placement of it goes. One thing I forgot to do, let's go in on this card right here and apply some of those greens within that area as well. I know I didn't apply the lighter green. I'll go back and do that. It's so dark in this scene right here. I'm just going to go on with I don't think I'll even bother with that lightest of greens. Kind of getting a nice glow with this, at least. Okay, now, see the difference here? Kind of coming around a little bit. Let's go into this one now and hit it with some additional shadows in terms of using that darker green. Okay. Now let's take our... I was thinking about taking the black. Let's go ahead and do that. Black or brown, maybe. Let me see. I need a clean stylus tool. Here we go. Okay. Let's do this. If I want to use brown in that grassy area, let's go ahead and address the that mill at this point in time, okay? Let's go with the light brown, which is, in this case, it's a pale orange. Go with a, if you have a tan or a walnut color or something like that, go ahead and use that. Okay, now on this, I'm going to be careful not to do too much of the roof with this color. This is just a straight brown, like I said. Okay, so we have a little bit of a variation. The vertical side has a little bit more of this brown, and the rooftop is left more kind of that lighter beige tan. Okay, now on this one, let's just hit, let's say cabin is brown, so I'm coloring the cabin brown. Okay, let's go with kind of a monochromatic over the top of it. So that's what we have right now. Okay, here we go. Okay, now, a lot of times within my grassy areas, I like to bring in some of this brown or brownish tint to, you know, really bright areas, just to kind of knock them down a little bit in terms of their vibrancy. They're rich in terms of color, but and intensity, but it's just not quite as hot looking. Okay, let's do the same for in here, but let's do it not just on the shadows. Let's just bring it in everywhere. Okay. Alright. Light brown, let's move to a darker brown. Some good choices for darker brown could be like some of the darker distress inks or something like that, maybe. If you don't have like a Marvy or a dark brown of a different brand. Okay, let's see. Let me try to hit this mill with a little bit of this brown. Again on the vertical sides, giving the mill itself a little bit more dimension. Okay. Alright, now, this is really kind of getting to me. I said I wasn't going to do a whole scene, but I can't leave my scene looking like this. This looks really strange to me, as is. Okay, let me go with the darker blue. I've just switched back to my blue tip right here, okay? But we'll still wear. I might finish this scene off a little bit more so than I was planning on, but it'll still be within the you know, the format of light and dark. On this one right here, with this blue, I'm bringing in more of that darker tone. Okay. Doing it selectively. I still have that lighter area within it. And let's do the same thing for the sky, okay? Let's go on the edges, the perimeter, okay? Bring it in a little bit. We can have some streaks in there, okay? And we can add in a bit of kind of a vignette to the scene. By having this blue around at the edges. Okay. Alright, now let's bring this blue, if we're going to use it on that one, let's bring it in on this one, okay? But let's not be so selective with it. Let's, you know, come into the scene and just put it over everything. Okay. All right. Let's take a look here. Why don't we go back in with black now and introduce that into the scene to really kind of contain and frame the composition. I believe this black will also kind of be the value, the layer that will kind of bring the scene together, because it's the same color that I stamped my darkest impressions in, so I see that as being the color that I want to finish off with. Okay, now if I didn't use black to stamp out the impression, I might use something lighter, and that would, you know, kind of finish off the coloring aspect of it in terms of the overall, you know, hue that's being applied in here. Okay. Hitting the edges here. The ink isn't really sticking very well. It's because it's all so saturated, which isn't a bad thing, you know. It really glides and blends on the page just fine, but what I'm saying is, you know, as I'm tapping this down, it's really not sticking as much. I can allow this to dry a little bit, and it'll do just fine, but you know, I'm not going to do that here. These videos already get long enough. Okay. A lot of variation so far. Okay. Alright, on this one, I won't bring in black everywhere, but let's just, you know, kind of come into the center of the page a little bit more so. And I'm doing this video for kind of a reason. When people are kind of new to scenic stamping, and one of the most common things that people tell me is that they have a hard time controlling or creating light, okay? And this is what is happening when they move into the medium or darker tones especially, okay? They're seeing these areas as like one whole piece, like an area to fill in color, okay? That's the same thing for like a cabin. They're not thinking about objects yet, you know. This I'm talking about for a lot of beginning scenic stampers. They're not seeing the rock as like a dimensional object, much like, say, this pad would be, okay? Now I have these lights coming in here, but you can see the site is in shadow, you know. If I turn this, here we go. The side's in shadow and this one's light. So you're thinking about it in terms of kind of the vertical and horizontal sides of it, like much like this rock could be, okay? Or this cabin, you know, instead of thinking it as like a box, they're thinking of it as a flat, you know, two-dimensional shape, which it is. But we want to give the illusion of three-dimensional, that third dimension in terms of the object when it comes to shading, okay? Let's see here. Now, okay, so what happens is, if you see kind of these areas just as big, huge areas, that part's green, we got blue, brown, and blue here. This is looking really flat, okay? This one right here, there's a little bit more depth to it in space. We have reflected, we don't have a light source in it so much, but we have reflected light, you know, wherever it might be coming in from. Okay, now let's expand this a little bit. Let's move into some things that you can do. Let's say if you've left some areas light. Okay, now it doesn't mean you have to do this, but let's say I wanted to use a bit of this water pattern small stamp, okay? If I've retained some of the light of my paper, I can see some of that texture in there. Okay, this is a really light blue, but I can see it in my white areas, right? Of course, in here, you know, I can do this all day. I'll never see it in that value of blue, okay? Now, I could probably go into a black and I can stamp this down there. I can see it, which is what I would have to do. Which isn't to say that's bad, but there's just less variation that you've allowed for yourself, okay? Let's use this Memento Danube Blue with this water pattern again, but let's put it down in some of the darker areas, okay? Alright, so we're kind of building up a little bit. See how this is looking a little bit more dimensional now? Okay. Alright, now we also used kind of a dark blue. This is a Marvy blue. Okay, but let's apply this in the pretty dark areas, okay? Not in the middle, but I've applied this down here, so it's beginning to look a little bit more dimensional, right? Okay. Because we're working darks in the shaded areas. The darkest blue shows up over the medium tone blues. The lightest blue showed up over the white. The medium blue could show up over the white, but showing up in the lighter blue. Darkest blue shows up over the medium blue. And where it's really dark around here, we can't really see too much at this point in time. But let's try it with the black, okay? Okay. Okay, there's that water. Looks fairly dimensional, I would think, you know, and shimmery as far as water's, you know, pattern goes, and maybe the texture that you'd find in an area like that. All right. Okay, now let's take this even further in terms of going back to the idea of light and shade. We have that cabin back there, and a lot of us have alcohol markers, right? And you might have them in various values of certain hues. Okay, let's try it on this mill. Okay, it's fairly light. Okay, so I'm applying this down on the mill. Let's put a little bit of it on the roof, maybe. Okay. I don't see too much of this value on the side because I felt the sides were about equally, if not even darker, than that pen itself. But it's a good way to start. I always start off light. This one right here, I'm going to use for my shadows. Let's go underneath the eave, or that roof, and I'll apply some of this on the inside of that mill where it's darker. Okay. See that? It's underneath that little area, so we're working with the shadows again. I could probably use a little bit of here, just for a little bit of added dimension. For some variation. Okay. A little bit streaky, that darker tone. So what I can do is I'll just go back in with my lighter one and kind of blend that in a little bit, just so it's a little bit more graceful. Okay. This it looks like a close. This is what you'd be looking at, you know. At your normal distance, so it looks something like that. Okay. Now let's do something for some of these rocks. Now, some of these rocks down here I've made quite green. Let's say there's moss growing on them or something of that sort. I mean, I could have worked around it, but I was kind of hurrying through it, so yeah, I was trying some of this brown on that rock. I'm not sure if I like that. Let's go in with maybe a couple gray tones, okay? Let's see what these look like. I think this one's a blender, actually. Yeah, it's clear. I've never used that before. Okay, there's gray. Let's take a look at some of these rocks down here and see if this isn't too gray. I think that looks okay. Okay, now what I'm doing is at the base of some of these rocks over here, I'm putting some additional tone, okay? On the top surface of them, just like this mill, I won't put any of this ink, okay? So let's see, this is what it kind of looks like. You can do it in some of the water as shadows. Remember, wherever I put this gray, it's not going to look gray because these alcohol-based markers are transparent. The inks are transparent. So the colors underneath are going to be showing through. But this color is certainly going to affect it, you know, in terms of adding a shadow to it or changing the hue a little bit. Okay. Subtle, but a little bit more dimensional. So especially down to these rocks, it's kind of rendered them a little bit more. They look kind of strange though, don't they? You know why? It's because they're not the same hue as their, you know, sibling rocks. So let's put a little bit of green onto them, I think. Okay, that was a little bit of a kind of a mossy green. Seafoam moss, maybe. Yeah, this one's a little bit too. I don't want to use that. It's too bright. Yeah, this one's a little bit more subdued. Okay. This one right here could use a little bit of a shadow down below. Oh, let's try. Seeing what colors I have. I don't have a huge collection of these. This is kind of an olive green. Be good for the shadows in the green areas. Okay. It's looking a little bit more dimensional in terms of the depth. Here it is with this water down here. See how busy the water is right now? Okay. That water, it's a little bit wet still. I was going to say I'm going to put some additional kind of streaks in there. And let me go ahead and do it right now. It's going to smear a little bit, but I'm not using it everywhere. Well, maybe I won't put streaks. Maybe I'll just put this little bit of a stronger vignette down here. Okay. Alright, this isn't what I wanted to do in terms of the length of video. I was supposed to put just a few little shadows on some rocks and highlights, but what can I say? I get into these things and you know, I just want to complete the scene. It's just in my nature, no pun intended, at this point in time. After doing kind of demonstrations for so many years, you just want to keep working the scene until it's done, or until it looks right. I don't know what is done. You know, it's whatever you say it is. Okay, now let's see. We need some foreground here. We see a little, you know, a lot of variation within here. You see these shadows, and you see these rocks, how they're a little bit more rendered, okay? And then when you look at the overall, it just, you know, having that variation there, I think this looks better, you know. I don't know about you, but this looks, you know, it looks okay. I'd still work more of this in here. I could still work shadows and stuff like that. But I'm just saying it's just solid areas of a uniform value. And right in here, this is green all right in here, but, you know, there's just variations of green, light and dark. And this little structure right here, there's variations of light and dark within that. We have our sky. Sky is kind of blue. Light and dark within that. Certainly light and dark within this area down here. So it's this kind of oscillation between light and dark. We have dark, light, dark, you know. Here there's, you know, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, okay? I think that lends itself to a much richer potential, you know, potentially more a richer surface area, okay? Let's just do something really quick here with the foreground. Hold on. Sorry. One of the things that occurred to me with that last lesson that I did, video lesson, was when I used the pigment ink and gel pen, white gel pen, you know, that really takes care of the highlights, okay? But in those highlights, it also kind of defined lighter areas in some areas, okay? So let's go ahead and do this. I love kind of this mist coming off of water, okay, which would look really strange, and I'll show you this, what this looks like in areas where I didn't retain some of the kind of the light white of the page, okay, the paper. Okay, so you have this kind of meandering, a little bit more of a whimsical look to it, you know, when you add that kind of that illuminated fog within a scene. Okay, now let's take a look at what this would look like over this, okay? Alright. Now I could add more, but you can see what that looks like. It really stands out, okay, in comparison to this. And it's not as natural looking. Okay. Let me see, let me get my pen. Okay, this is the white gel pen. Use it in, I don't know if I've used it in 100% of my scenes, but certainly a lot of them. Okay. This white gel pen is fantastic for highlighting. And just as we added shadows to the base of some of these rocks, we can also add a bit of highlighting to the top side of the rock. Well, not just rocks, but just any type of object, okay? So this is what that might look like, okay? Shadows down here, highlights up here, okay? On here, it's just very simple. There's probably 3 dots. Over here, where it's in the lighter area, you add a few more, condense them. And then you kind of taper them out. You know, as it moves into the darkness, you have them spread out a little bit more. A lot of times the inclination is to, when people use this, they have all of their little highlights perfectly spaced, and it's always like 1/8 of an inch out, you know, from each other. You're gonna have to, you know, apply a little bit more and then a little bit less in some areas. You want to add variation, okay? Within this grassy area, maybe we have some little dew on the grass or something. And it's illuminating the dew, whatever lighting there might be. Okay. Where else can we add it? This area in here is kind of feeling, it's a little bit boring, isn't it? Let's add a few little highlights, you know, as if, yeah, we can get a little bit of that. I don't know. Dew, or maybe there's some pearly everlasting or something over there. Little white flowers that are capturing whatever light this is. As far as this white paint pen, this is or white gel pen, this is a Uniball Signo, S-I-G-N-O pen. Okay. There's little dots down here. That's kind of bringing that area to life a little bit, you know. That's what I think. Otherwise, it's kind of, yeah, it's a little bit boring in here. Yeah, see, let me see if I can, here. This is really hard to do. I'm just holding this and tapping this. Yeah, kind of like that, okay? But what it looks like at arm's reach is that. Okay. Oh, let's add a few of these, certainly, in the water. What's lighting on a water without specular light, kind of shimmering and glistening. Okay. Looks like that. Farther. Let's take a look at this one. Let's take a look at, see what a few highlights might look like on this in those same areas. Okay, let's put highlights on top of the roof. Tops of these rocks. Okay. Now I know there's bound to be some people who say, I like this one better. Which might be so. So if you like that one better, then do it this way. Okay, let's see here. Okay, let's go back to this image. This is the Reed's large stamp. And let's just add a little bit of foreground to this. And kind of to complete somewhat the composition here. Kind of anchors it. Adds a bit more texture and depth, certainly. I just stamped that out, the two corners, did it a few, I don't know, 2 or 3 impressions on each side, or was it 4? Changed the angle a little bit, so it's not just picket fence or something like that running across there, but I changed the angle between impressions, and I also re-inked this in between impressions because this is fairly dark down here, so I want nice dark impressions of it down there. Okay, so that's what that looks. You stamp it over the water, but I think that shimmering water looks even better with that foreground over the top of it because it kind of plays off of each other. It plays off the bright, the lightness down here in terms of the value by having something darker next to it, okay? Alright, let's see. Let's put on some final touches here. We have this rooftop here and that cabin. Okay, let's turn it in space a little bit more. I'm talking about space, dimensional space, visually dimensional. Put a few little highlights on top of it like it's capturing that, some light maybe. Just like what's happening on the rocks, so you're kind of reiterating that idea of light coming in from above somewhere. And that gives that mill a little bit more, a little bit more of a dimensionality, that third dimension. Okay, maybe a star or two in the sky. I don't know, or 10, 20. Okay. We need some fireflies in here or something. That would be kind of cool. Oh, okay, I say that. Now let me do a couple of them if I can. Oh, where's my... Let me see if I have a green. Do I want my green one? Or let's do it with this yellow one here. This is a yellow gel pen. Okay. Okay, I put kind of a few larger dots. I just smeared one because it was still wet. Okay, they're right there. Maybe here. The one I smeared was right there, which is just to come to show you that it'll just wipe right off if you don't like a dot that you've placed somewhere. Actually, this yellow looks kind of good. I'm going to add a few dots down here into that white area. These won't represent fireflies, but just adding a little bit of variation within there. Here's pink. I know you're saying pink, what? Let's just make it really subtle, okay? Let's get just a couple little pink things right in there. You really can't, you can barely see it, but it kind of relates to this reddish millet there, so I've just added a little bit more of kind of a touch of that hue in that area. Alright, now this is one area that I would really benefit from allowing that ink to dry. Actually, I'm going to have to. Okay, But you'll see me do this. I'll do it in the beginning of the video, so you'll see me at what I did here. But I have this color box, green, and I'm going to put a little bit of a glow around some of those fatter little dots. And that should represent kind of this glowing little firefly, lightning bug, whatever. Okay, so that should be it for now, and I'll also figure out some kind of matting to put on this. I really like how this scene came out. So, two different types of scenes, two different approaches in terms of the application of value and hue, okay? One's a little more strategic in terms of controlling my lighting, and one is more of just an exercise of just applying layered ink, okay? If you can do this, you can do this. Because doing this, I mean, I apply a lot more effects on here, but in terms of the coloring, okay, this is just a lighter application of this, okay? I just didn't apply ink within here, okay? On here I did all of these inks all the way throughout the entire thing, from the edge to edge, okay? In here, there's just all this green. There's still the layers of, you know, values that I've used and temperatures and things like that, but this one's just a little bit more selective, so this one's less coloring, this one's just more, okay? In terms of the color application, I think that this one is just, I think it's more effective in terms of the overall. Here it looks, this is what it looks like from a distance. You can see what those values look like, okay? In terms of adding to the overall richness of a given scene, card, whatnot, okay? So there you have it. I can't wait to get this matted up and to put those little finishing touches on it. For me, those little details are really where all the fun is, and where the scenes can really come alive, and adding those little extra touches. Okay, so anyways, I hope you enjoyed watching the video, and thanks as always for tuning into Stampscaping 101.